Good afternoon. Thank you all for attendance and to our government representatives. I'm Syrian. I'm a Canadian. Yes, we have met Jim. And I want to talk about just one of the small issues when it comes to the refugee crisis in Syria. You know, I'm concerned not as a Syrian, not as a Canadian, but honestly as a human being. Canada has taken a leadership role. I don't know if people know this. Canada is the #1 country in the world when it comes to immigration, but yet we've done very little when it comes to Syria. And there's, I don't want to say zero. But,
come on, say it, zero.
There's many issues I can get into, but there's one that I want to raise to the attention of our representatives and to everyone here, because it is a precedent that is be unique possibly to the Syrian crisis right now, but can affect other refugee crises in the future. So principally there's two ways that refugees can enter this country. One is through a government resettlement program, and the other is through private sponsorship. And according to the government's policy right now is, in both cases, the refugees need to be recognized by the UNHCR. Now, unfortunately, with the situation in Syria, over 1.5 million people have registered, and I mean, we're talking about less than a fraction of a percent actually have any recognition. So essentially, this has created a situation where refugees can't come into this country without this recognition. And this is an important issue that we need to start discussing is, do we need to take a look at this when there's exceptional situations in changing this policy now? As a Canadian, I'm obviously concerned about, our security. Going through the UNHCR, there's obviously protocols and processes that are followed to ensure better security. But, any immigrant that comes to this country needs to go through security and health checks. So, there's no excuse when it comes to that. So what I want to know is, if you have any commentary on, when these crises and, situations arise, what can we do about it? How can we make sure that this type of bureaucracy, this UNHCR recognition, doesn't, limit us from, making a difference? Because it's 2 years on, and the refugee crisis is only getting worse every day. And this can happen for other countries in the future if they're in a situation where they can't bring refugees in because of this recognition issue.
We've been working with the Syrian community for the last 2 years on that same issue. We've asked for emergency debate upon an emergency debate. An emergency debate was just held a couple of weeks ago, and yet the Syrian community has been very vocal on two issues, and the Conservative government has not done anything. One of the issue is that they want any money that they've raised to match dollar for dollar in order to help the refugees, the displaced people, as well as provide help on the ground in Syria. The Conservatives have said that we're supporting this program and that program. The community, I'm aware, has raised millions, correct?
Somewhere in that number.
Somewhere in that number. And yet, the Conservative government has not matched dollar for dollar. Yes, when we had Haiti, well, I can go back to 2001 when we had the earthquake in Gujarat, and then there was the tsunami, and then there was the earthquake in Muzaffarabad. This was under the Liberals.
I personally matched.
Thank you very much. This was the first one that was done.
The very first one was done. I was the Minister for International Cooperation. I matched dollar for dollar everything raised in the Indian community when the Gujarat earthquake took place in Gujarat. And we started doing, so the Government of Canada worked with the community very closely, and matching every dollar that the community raised, we matched. And then we worked together in partnership to partner the community with international or local NGOs to work with to deliver the services on the ground. It was a partnership with the community from point one to point A.
And yet, when it comes to Syria, not only we don't have programs about speeding family class. When we had Iraq, automatically, the only thing you had to write outside the envelope on the sponsorship case was Iraq, parental case, boom, in front of the line. Same thing from China when we had the earthquake. Same thing when we had the tsunami. But in Syria, nothing. So one of the things that the community is totally mad about is that I haven't had a sit down with Minister of Citizenship and Immigration in order to put this case in front of him. The other thing that you guys are mad about is that we're not matching dollar for dollar. Two things that we're pushing for, and Mr. Ray had requested an emergency debate, and I spoke, and another colleague spoke, was one, dollar for dollar on what you raised. Two, expedite the immigration cases. I have a case of an individual with sponsored experience since 2008. He's out in Calgary. And his parents are in Dubai. And Mississauga is still sitting in sponsorship. And they've applied for a super visa. Now, never mind all the local and why are we not engaged, why are we not doing this and not doing that. I would leave that for another series.
Well, it's the UN recognition issue.
The UN
is
issue.
really one of the big roadblocks right now. And how can we change our mindset when there's a crisis? We need to be able to adapt. And I'm just curious to know what you guys think about being able to adapt when there's emergency crises that happen.
The protocol that was set up through the years, was a liberal protocol, is if there's a man-made or a natural disaster, if people should be given a visitor visa in order if they have family in Canada to come to Canada until the situation changes. Two, parentals, spousal, family class applications in front of the line. We even gave ministers permits. Judy's not here, but Judy had, at the time was Minister of Citizenship and Immigration in Tsunami. We gave ministers permits for people in order to come to Canada and have their applications being followed throughout Canada. And then the last one was we matched dollar for dollar, as well as we gave upfront millions of dollars to people who worked on. That's gone out the window in Syria. But in other countries, it's okay. And when Haiti happened, because we had a lockdown, and the House of Commons was, I think they can call it a lockdown, or prorogued, the Prime Minister went and said, I am making a donation at Red Cross. Well, Prime Minister, where the hell are you now when it comes to Syria? Where the heck are you now when it comes to other countries? Oh, I'm sorry, we don't have a prorogue system. So UNHCR, definitely, we got to make sure that we enhance that. And number two, when Mr. Kennedy goes abroad and says, I'm allowing more people to come from Syria, he's not allowing Syrians to come to Canada. These are people that were from Iraq into Syria and Jordan, Oman. And these are the applications that he is saying that we're allowing more. He's not allowing any more. It's the same numbers. It's the same numbers. And we had to push them into 2007 in order to do that. Philly was the one that announced 1,000 people, and they went up and up and up and up. But unfortunately, Syria, whatever. Thank you. You're welcome.
As an Iranian, I would like to clarify something for everyone. I believe in Canada they are not aware that when it becomes a specific country like Iran, there is no difference between refugee and immigrants. There are 5 million Iranians all around the world. We left the country. As myself, 20 years ago, I came to Canada as a landed immigrant, but in my heart, I was a refugee, and still I am a refugee because I couldn't live there. And although with this point, federal government, they are not aware to see that if a lot of Iranians, they are in Canada, it's not that they came here for opportunity. They cannot live in here, but they continue still for a few of them that they were unfortunate to have these papers. They came here as a refugee status, they continue to deport them. In January 2012, when we started the movement, no deportation to Iran, we could stop deportation of cows to feed. And I believe at that time, the government became aware of the irony of his politics. From one side, he is on the head of all the countries around the world to announce that Iran is a violator of human rights. And the other side, he continues to deport it. And since then, there is no deportation to Iran, and we are very proud to say that deportation to Iran is stopped, not only because of our movement, because of the government, the federal government became aware of this wrongdoing that it was doing. But the question today is, although they don't deport any Iranian to Iran, but they continue to proceed the refugees the same way. They send them to jail, they detain them more than 100 days, they handcuff them, chain them. We have 2 suicides in Canada of refugees, and finally, after all of this, they let them stay. And before they become free, they need some bail up to $90,000. And for these 3-4 months, they lose their job, they lose their residence, they lose their credit. Here, I don't have any question, but what I need is not work, is real support. We are lucky to live in Toronto, Ontario, with a liberal government. As our member, Reza Moridi, he supported all refugees, he came on the street, he manifested with us. We expect for our liberal government, yes, you too, or yes, you were with us. We need a real support. Because at this level, we cannot only by demonstrating or writing letters on behalf to the government to make changes. We are expecting for our liberal government to act strongly and stop it, and somehow to stop this torture that they are doing with the Iranian refugees. Thank you.
Yes, no. You got a debate or no?
No, I'm not sure, but I could be mistaken here, but Carol knows. Erwin Cutler, I think, is sponsored something or did something with some Iranian person that was in a jail in Iran. I could be wrong.
Yeah, and all last week was the awareness week, that every day they highlighted somebody for Monday to Friday last week. It was really impressive on Parliament Hill.
Yeah. So we're on side.
So there's action all the time. You just have to convince the current government that the national level. Provincially, of course, it's a little bit different. Next. Before we go, sorry, how many are prepared for questioning on this side? How many are left?
How many more we got?
How many people? Put your hands up if you're asking questions.
That's
You're the last one.
That's it.
Okay, you're the last one then, and then we will close after you. Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, actually, I don't have a question. I just
You can make a comment. It's okay.
yeah, I just have a comment regarding the gentleman from the UFT. We have Dr. Michael Couteau, who is a very big person in American society in terms of string theory and stuff like that. And he's mentioning one thing. He's saying that the United States has a very strong secret weapon, and that's H-1B. H-1B basically is a program that you are allowed to go to the United States to get your PhD or master, and after 1 year you can apply for a job, and actually 25% of all startups in the US, the multi-million dollar startups, are run by these people. So my comment and probably question is that, we have a program. I came to this country as a skilled worker, but we have a gentleman just mentioned that we need the skilled worker to train our skilled worker. So that's one great question.
That is foreign workers.
Yeah, foreign workers, yes. The foreign workers mean skilled workers.
No.
There's a difference.
There's a difference.
Okay.
If I may just clarify. A foreign worker is someone that comes into Canada for 2 years on a foreign worker work permit. She or he works for 2 years, and then they have to go back.
Okay.
And they are coming in order to fill a job, which is a void, and no Canadian can do, or no Canadian is willing to do, like up north where that work, and they, most of the time, have to transfer their knowledge and skills to the company that is hired.
So the question which comes to my mind is that if we don't or we cannot keep the graduates from the university system inside the country, so what's the priority? Would it be better, like the American system, to create a middle class, not importing a middle class? You bring people. I'm single basically, but you bring people with the family, with the wife, and with the children, and they come here. And for the first 3-4 years, of course, they have to do other jobs which is not related to their job. And in today's world economy, because of the technology is changing so fast, they will go behind the skill set that they need. Because let's say I'm a computer engineer. If I don't get certified in 6 months, my skill set will be obsolete. That's the truth. So my comment is that we have to give the priority to the university graduate and those who comes inside the university system as a function to bring them back to the middle class family and the family in Canada.
Good points. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Comment?
Would you want to come
You want to
down?
come down? Is anybody else besides this gentleman that wants to ask a question?
That has not yet been up to the mic.
No? Okay. Last question.
I'll just, maybe just on the refugee house, if people,
You want-
if,
After the question, maybe?
okay,
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
go ahead. Well, I was just gonna say that we need your help, because in certain situations, we've been able to move the government, or what Erwin Kotler calls the mobilization of shame, with a certain story. And around the refugee health cuts, it really was because people pointed out that some of the Afghan interpreters who'd been invited by Canada to come were now being denied health care. And so it was when that was pointed out by a question period that the government actually did have to change its mind and make a, you know, even though they only made a special consideration for that. But we you know, if the core Canadian value is fairness, if you can help us also for questions in question period, things that just don't seem fair, that long before we form the government in 2 years, we're still going to have to try and get these guys to do something right occasionally. And it is by the stories that you are telling us that seem really unfair and not the way to build a country. And it is only with your help that we're going to get this done. Thanks very much.
Hi there. Thank you everyone for organizing this event. I appreciate the opportunity you've given the community, and thank you for everyone for attending also. My question is regarding temporary foreign workers. It's a program that's been in the media recently. As I understand it, and I'm not certain that I have it all correctly, but as I understand it, so the program has existed previously for a number of years, but the change that the Conservative government made was that in order to be a temporary foreign worker, if a government is going to hire them, or if a company is going to hire them, they no longer have to pay them the same amount.
15% less.
It's up to 15% less. So what are your thoughts in terms of, to me it seems like what we would want to do is to have companies that are going to, if we want to discourage companies from doing this, wouldn't we want to have, rather than a decrease in pay up to 15% less of the set wage, wouldn't we want to have an increase? Or what are your thoughts on those issues?
I don't know if when you came in, there was a handout that was going on. This is an article that was written today by in the Toronto Star, and it reads, yet Kenny has kept bringing 250,000 and more immigrants every year, and it jumps to the next paragraph, says, yet Kenny is also bringing hundreds of thousands of temporary foreign workers, of whom we have at least 500,000. For severely, the program kept growing while the economy slowed down. Faced with public fury, he recently made a show of reforming it by telling me, did not kill it or even cap it. This is Stephen Harper's Republican Economic Theologically, supply business with cheap and pliant labor, yabba, 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 15% less. Thank you very much.
Essentially, though, I think it's important to understand what really happened here. Prior to the changes that the government Kenny put in, foreign workers were coming to Canada always, but with the condition that they were only to jobs where there were no Canadians essentially that would do the jobs. And as Jim said earlier, most of them were farm workers, sometimes in construction if there was a real vacancy. But the employer had to put out there for quite a long time to prove that they could find a Canadian to do that job and all that stuff. So, and the numbers were somewhere around 150 or so a year, 1,000 of them. Then what happened is Kenny changed that, and they fast-tracked for businesses to get the people in. So all of those conditions went out the window, essentially. They were technically there, but didn't mean anything. And then they could pay them less. So essentially, it was bringing in large numbers, and it was not to replace skills. Now they were replacing low-end jobs at McDonald's, whatever, in Alberta, everywhere else. And they were paying them, they were allowed to pay less money. And that drives employment and jobs down and wages in Canada as well. That's what they were doing it for. I mean, I'll be very frank with you. I'm not going to mince words here. This is what I personally feel. And I think most people will agree with me. That's the reason for increasing, maybe quadrupling the foreign worker program and allowing employers to pay less money, less wages, and fast-tracking them into filling all kinds of jobs everywhere, not just where there was a problem, like as we saw with Toronto Dominion Bank and so on, where they're actually bringing people in to train, and the guys who are training are the ones going to lose their jobs. I mean, it's absolutely obscene. It was to drive down wages in Canada. This is a government intent as far as I'm concerned. So far, despite the outcry and all of the stuff in the media, nothing really has happened with that program. I think we have to start push back even more aggressively. Because this is what I said earlier when we started it, and that is that traditionally and historically in this country, we have brought in, as the young man was saying with people in New York and students, we brought in people as immigrants. I came as an immigrant as a child. Jim came as a refugee. We came here and they come and they invest in the country. They build businesses. Yes. They raise families, they have jobs, they become the inventors, they become the future. They build the country. Bringing people in for the sole purpose of exploiting and pushing them out. That's what Europe has done. That's why you've got problems in France and everywhere else, because I come from Italy, and I'll tell you, when we came here, you couldn't go to France or to Switzerland or to Germany. The only way to go there was that you would work, but you were never, ever, ever going to be considered a resident, a citizen, and your children would never have citizenship rights. You were always expected to go back to your country, and if you'd been there 30 years and the unemployment went down, then you were kicked out. That is not humane. We build a country here, but that's what is happening now. There are, the article says something 500,000 supposedly. We don't know. The U.S. has millions of people working underground. And that is what we're creating here. That is why what's happened with the foreign worker program is absolutely, totally unacceptable. Because our focus should be on immigration and as the young man said earlier, with respect to young students who want to stay and aren't being assisted and so on. So I just had to say that because we talk around the foreign worker program, but some people don't really know exactly what's been happening with it and what the perverse intent of it is and the damage it's doing to this country and to our society. I mean, just this is my final example. In BC, a Chinese mining company was allowed to bring in 300 miners, just like that. And the Canadian miners had to go to court, and are still in court, trying to get their rights to work there, to be trained to do that job. So you tell me what justice is. That's my last word. Thank you for your input. I really appreciate that.
If I may, just one final comment. We'll be circulating an email to you to give us your thoughts, and to some people didn't speak. You might want to sound off and tell us what you think. We're also going to be devising a petition that should, on different refugees, Syria, for those of you that want to get active and sign, and we'll be emailing that to you. And thank you all.